and studied relics in church history, and profoundly impacts many who encounter its mystery.
As a person of faith, looking at it through the eyes of faith, I don't think it can help but touch your heart.
Something that we can look on not only to bolster our faith in those moments of weakness, but also to deepen our faith and our appreciation, our intimacy with Christ.
Join Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry as they examine the science of the Shroud through the lens of faith.
Really interesting scientific information that we didn't know about, like the pollen from all the different regions of the world. As the Shroud traveled around, it picked that up. Some of the mites, things like that was really interesting to me. I mean, this made you really want to believe it a lot more.
It's impressive. Like, humanly, I don't think that is another level of love. It's not I'm gonna say, oh, I love you, I'll give you a chocolate. No. I'm giving you more than my life. I'm giving you my suffering.
Asking both experts and disciples, who do you say I am?
As far as who the man of the Shroud is, as a person of faith and kind of reviewing the evidence there, it seems that a convincing argument can be made that it's Jesus of Nazareth.
Visit patchworkheart.org/shroud to learn more and get exclusive behind-the-scenes updates for your support.
The St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation, in partnership with Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network, presents a podcast for families in crisis.
Hello and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. This is Ann DeSantis, Executive Director, accompanied by Mickey Kelly, our President. Mickey, welcome back to our podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
And it's great to be back for I like to call it the series finale.
That's right. That's exactly what it is, because believe it or not, we are at that very last Beatitude. This is our Beatitude series for our Families in Crisis series as well. And we're at that last Beatitude, which is, blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. So let's unpack that. I mean, I think we've done a great job, Mickey, with God's help on all of these Beatitudes, but this one is really the capstone of them all, isn't it?
I agree. It is, because I feel like, well, it kind of piggybacks a little bit with our previous episode, which is about the blessed are you who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. Because let's face it, this kind of goes like a step further, even though I kind of think of them as, I kind of think of the last two Beatitudes. Well, I think the one we're covering now, I think it's kind of overlooked. It's not seen as a Beatitude, but I kind of think of the eighth Beatitude and this one as Siamese twins, so to speak. And the way I see it is that, and of course, like you said, and we're definitely going to be unpacking this one. And one of the things we're definitely going to unpack is the fact that there are Catholics who have been, ridiculed. They have been, wowed up. They even had to endure some harm from people that the only reason that it's not because of them is because of the fact that the Catholic Church has been proven right for the past 3 millenniums, and they figure they resort to some kind of violent confrontation to get their point across, and it fails. And we have seen this quite a bit recently, and as we are about to release this podcast episode, we're trying to navigate the summer of violence, the summer of I like to call it the summer of hate, that those who support abortion, with the imminent ruling of Dobbs versus Jackson, as well as, if it may go, probably by the time this release, it has gone in our favor, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and then send the abortion case back to the states where it has belonged for the past, where it should have been done for the last 5 decades. And honestly, violence will not get your point across at all. And we have seen faithful Catholics, people that we know or do not know, who have been attacked for their beliefs, whether physically, socially, mentally, whatever. They have been attacked for one reason only, is because they are a faithful follower of Jesus.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up about what's going on in our culture right now, because we as a foundation, where our focus is families in crisis and individuals in crisis, it affects us. It affects people who like you who are listening. Is the things that are happening in our culture and in our society that are affecting pro-life, right? I mean, Mickey's so involved in that. So I just want to make it a point to thank you for what you do to help to foster that, to help to give those moms the right choice, which is the only choice really, right? Is the choice for their child. And so because life is part of what it means, and the definition really of what it means to be living our faith, because the first liberty, right, is our right to life. And as people of faith, we are exercising that. So I just want to thank you for sharing that and your own personal experience. We've talked a lot about that on this podcast, your own experience with that. But talk more, if you would, Mickey, because when you've come face to face with that feeling of almost being reviled, I guess, and the way that you handle it, and the way that you've seen people handle that in a good way, which actually helps to evangelize. Have you ever witnessed that happen before, where you have been in that situation, feeling kind of persecuted or reviled, but also being able to step away, knowing that you did the right thing, or maybe someone that you were with did the right thing as well?
Well, I have seen people would say, God bless you, or we'll be praying for you, things like that. And then there are other times that I remember, like, this one person, I'll keep his name anonymous, for the sake of charity. But he has, I think that he just, like, I felt like he was trying to get a rise out of the person that will walk past us, or try to rebuke us or whatever, and he will go on. And there were times, like, he almost, like, the other person would get confrontational with this other pro-lifer, and I would just be like, yikes, I don't want to get involved, and let's face it, I have seen some good, and then I have seen some bad and ugly, in over the years of being involved in pro-life. But if I were to offer something, I would say, even if you're tempted to say something back, just remember that soul, because you do want to redeem a soul from purgatory. That is for sure. And getting in an argument is not one of the ways to do it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I like how you express that, because, I think the biggest weapon for this, and I think you're going to agree with this, is probably prayer, but especially the Rosary. And I know that when you've been in front of some of those facilities before, that prayerful of a praying of the Rosary, which, I know that you and I have done that before in those circumstances and other circumstances as well. And it truly does bring about that peace. Would you agree with that? The power of the Rosary?
Oh, for sure. It is a weapon of peace.
Yes, it is a weapon of peace. And so I would just offer that to you, our listeners here. If you're feeling that sense of, being reviled, because again, that beatitude is, blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. And I know that for some who are listening, maybe you've been affected by divorce or separation or relationship issues. And sometimes, those evils can happen, the evils of gossip, the evils of feeling falsely accused. Let's unpack that a little bit, Mickey. Just, I think all of us, maybe including even you and I, we have experienced that whole feeling of, being persecuted, or being, maybe, as I just said, falsely accused for something that maybe later on it's figured out that you were innocent. I didn't know if you wanted to speak on that, because our listeners who are affected by family crisis, I'm sure that they do understand that.
I can't really think of anything for me personally, but I can only imagine that there will be times that you will be falsely accused by others for this or that. And Jesus, he knows it full well. I mean, how many times he was denied, how many times he was falsely accused of blasphemy, when in reality it was those that in the Pharisees that were preaching it. I mean, look at some of the people that are canceled in our culture today, all because sheep dislike the truth, and the lions are preaching it. And we must never give up on preaching the truth, even if it comes to the point where people still ridicule us, we get canceled, whatever. Our voices must be heard, and we must shout it from the mountaintops if we must.
Yes, absolutely, because part of being Catholic, of course, a big part of it is living out a mission. And when you're following Christ, just as he was, say, I'll use that word again, falsely accused, we can be sure that we might experience those kinds of things. And, that feeling of not really fitting in, that feeling of, not being understood. And we know that Christ was not always understood by his followers. So the things that happened to him could also be the things that happen to us. We might not necessarily, obviously, come to a point of dying and being killed by someone, right? For the most part, but we die to ourselves every day, and that's part of, I think it is part of being persecuted, that we must not be tempted. We must not be tempted by the lures of the world, and even in defending ourselves sometimes, right? And know that the truth is what wins out. So it's also, when we examine those other Beatitudes, some of them were, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the pure of heart, and blessed are the peacemakers. The persecuted, which we did unpack a little bit on the last podcast, and we're just kind of continuing the discussion on this one, because that is that final beatitude, right? When you're reviled, which reviled is like almost like a true hate that someone has for you or for what you believe in. And so I just want to offer to our listeners just the idea of being courageous in your faith, having courage that as you follow these, as you follow this pattern of trying to love God with all your heart and all your soul, all your might, and also loving others as you love yourself, then you will find that courage. I didn't know if Mickey wanted to talk a little bit about that, because don't you think, I think so, but wouldn't you agree that courage is something that helps us, Catholic Christian courage helps us, that when we are feeling persecuted or reviled, that we can continue on this journey?
Well, and the thing is, and you and I have seen some of this firsthand ourselves, whether it's like on a personal level. And I remember one time you and I were outside of Planned Parenthood once, and something happened that kind of shook you to the core, so to speak. And I'm sure maybe you want to expand on that in a moment. But let's face it, whether it's street evangelization, praying outside of an abortion facility, whatever the case is that involves, putting the faith in the public square, and we do need more of that, of course, especially in light of some of the battles, the spiritual battles that we as people of faith have endured, for the past century. We have to keep in mind that the Bible, like, there's like a daily reminder to do not be afraid. And that's also been one of the battle cries of St. John Paul II. We must not be afraid to share our faith. We must not be afraid to pray in the public. And it's in the clergy, you must not be afraid to step out of your rectory and into the trenches to provide that spiritual boost for your faithful who are out there. I mean, granted, I know priests have, I understand priests have a lot of things to do, but I can assure you it wouldn't kill them to spare an hour at all. But to get to the bottom line is, every follower of Jesus needs this steadfast courage. John Wayne had a quote that he said, courage is you're scared, but you do something anyway. Now, granted, being outside an abortion facility may be a little daunting, maybe a little scary at first, but I can assure you, stepping out is better. Stepping out of your comfort zone is better than just staying in your own bubble.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'll just start out with, you had mentioned to me when I have experienced some kind of fear with you when we were praying outside of the facility, is that yes, I mean, there was a time that someone was walking out and had an aggressive action. I don't know whether they were doing it specifically toward me, but just toward a sign that was standing there, and just pushed it down in front of me. And I think what helps me through times like that, or even though that only happened once, but I mean, was just prayer, right? And prayer, and having that fortitude. And with that said, I mean, I did want to read something that I found on fortitude, which is from the Catholic News Agency.com. And it says that fortitude helps us to overcome any dangers, obstacles, and fears. It enables a person to withstand whatever difficulties may block him from attaining his true goal. Classically, fortitude was that virtue which made a man willing to fight and even potentially die in battle. It was seen as the virtue of the soldier who was determined to offer his life for the sake of a greater good. Now, we Catholics believe that we too are soldiers, that we too are engaged in battle. Although the battle is not a physical one, but rather spiritual, we too must be willing to offer our lives for the greatest good, namely the glory of God. I'll just continue the rest of what it says here. It says, in early Christian times, and even in parts of the world today, this possibility of being killed for the sake of the faith was and is very present. And so the church has been provided with the most shining example of fortitude, namely the martyrs. Now, I think that fortitude goes along very well, just to get back on track with what we're talking about and who we're talking to. Again, we're talking about this very last of the Beatitudes, and we are talking to families and individuals who have faced adversities and crisis. And you who are listening, you know who you are, whether you are someone who's affected by divorce, separation, job loss, health crisis, loss of a spouse or a loved one, other types of tragedies or traumas that you've gone through. It can be very hard, very difficult. And so when you have fortitude on your side, when you're living out that last beatitude, which again is the one that's geared toward those who are persecuted, when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on his account, on the Lord's account, is just remembering that your faith and those virtues are what sustain you. And it goes on to say in this article that this is a call of every Catholic to possess fortitude to the extent that we willingly offer up our lives for God and the Church. Although we probably won't be literally killed for our faith, still we must be prepared to make all kinds of great sacrifices in living out our Catholic identity. Now, Mickey and I did a whole series. I bring this up. We did a whole series on the cardinal virtues. And I would just recommend that to all of you listening. It's a 4-part series that we did. It is on our YouTube channel. All you need to do is go to our Filii Nonatus YouTube channel, and you go to the playlist there, and you'll see cardinal virtues. It's a nice 4-part series. So I just want to recommend that to you, especially for this particular beatitude, because I think that those cardinal virtues are ones that can help us to really grow and stay the course. Now, the saints knew a lot about that. I know you know that, Mickey. Can you share with us any favorite saints that you really know and love that had to really live out that fortitude or live out that persecution in a way that helped them to love God with all their hearts?
Well, my parish is St. Francis Xavier. And one of the things that stands out to me is there's like a statue and even an image of St. Francis Xavier. In one hand, he would hold a crucifix. And then the other hand, you would see that there's a heart that's engulfed in flame. And the reason I say that is because, and this is the golden era of the Jesuit order, by the way. This is part of the golden era of the Jesuit order before they became woke. Repent, Father Martin, if you're hearing this podcast, of course. Anyway, St. Francis Xavier would preach. He would go to the Indies, which was, of course, Asia, and he would preach. And there was no question that, he had a heart of charity. He had a heart on fire for the Lord that was filled with charity and mercy. And one of the great, and I'm sure he was scared, but he still had the courage to go and preach the gospel, and he made many disciples along the way. And we can too. Another saint that I love is St. John Paul II, one of the great popes that guided the Catholics into the into the new millennium. And he reminded people that, the Catholic faith is not just for the clergy, but it is also for the laity as well. And we really need to step up our game. And I can guarantee you that maybe 3 out of 4 canonized saints in the church are clergy or religious. And I think the laity really need to step up their game. No question about it. And I know there's a lot of causes for canonization that are being brought forth to the Vatican throughout the world. And there's quite a bit coming from the laity, like married couples, lay singles, whatever. And it's great. And we do have a couple along the way too, like Pier George Frassati and Carlo Acosta, who could be the first millennial saint ever canonized. Keep praying for that, of course. But overall, the bottom line is this. Catholic faith is not just for the religious. It's for anyone who has their eyes gazed on their ultimate goal in life, and that is heaven. Seek God in everything that you do. Pray, repent, fast, and give alms. I can assure you that will guide you to your ultimate goal in life, and that is to be venerated as a saint in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well said. I mean, you're speaking to all of us who mostly, probably, I'm going to say, that are listening. I'm sure we have some religious that are listening, or diocesan priests or other people who are in religious vocations, but the vast majority may be listening to this one are lay people. So that's a good calling that you made for all of us, that, we are all called to be saints. And one of those ways that we can be saints is through practicing those human virtues, right? And I'm looking at this article right now. It's called The 4 Human and Cardinal Virtues, and it is from a parish called Corpus Christi Catholic Church. I'm not exactly sure where they're located, but the website is corpuschristiphx.org, and it says that human virtues are called such because they are achieved through our own human will and effort, and because they order our relationship to our neighbor in love. They are called cardinal virtues because they are fundamental and the foundation on which all other virtues stand. When we practice these 4 virtues, we engage our intellect, faith, and will to achieve control over our passions and to increase our self-mastery. Doing so will help us to lead moral lives and allow us to lovingly exist in union with everyone around us while giving honor to God's will for our lives. These four virtues are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And those can be found in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, numbers 1804 and 1805. I just want to mention that because I do think that these podcasts they're definitely conversational, as you know, our listeners, but we mean for them to really be educational too. So not just conversational, but educational for you so that you can learn and grow in your faith. And especially those of you who are, going through some kind of a trauma. I do want to make a shout out too during this podcast. This is our last one, to go back and listen to this series. Again, it's called the Beatitudes. It's on our Philly Nonatus YouTube channel. All you need to do is go to the playlist there on YouTube. It's also on our website under podcast. You can see it there too. But if you go to that YouTube channel, you can see all the other ones that are listed there and just listen to all of them. I also want to make a shout out to you who are listening. Can you send these off also, if you would, to your church, diocese, archdiocese? Because we really want to get the word out to others about this work that we're doing to help those families and people who are going through the hardest of times, and let them know that we're there for them. I also just want to invite you to your free pastoral consultation with a Mercedarian friar, which is also available through our website. You go to nonatus.org. That's NONNATUS.org, like St. Raymond Nonatus. And there is a drop down there for a priestly consultation. So you simply fill out the form, and then me as an executive director will make that appointment for you so that you can meet with virtually, whether it be a cell phone call or a online call with one of our Mercedarian friars. So just want to put that shout out to all of you, because we really do want everyone to know about our services and what we offer. So we also just want to thank all of you for listening over these weeks and months, because this podcast has been going on for a long time now. This is actually the 9th episode of the Beatitudes series. So do let your friends and family know about it. I read that one again. I know I keep reading it, but I think it's good for us to meditate. And I wanted to ask Mickey if he had any kind of final thoughts on this one, which again is, blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. Mickey, did you have any kind of final words on this one? I do think this is a really important one for us to unpack.
I could just say, like, the only thing I could probably say is be not afraid. However, I would say be encouraged and encourage others to live out their faith. Most importantly, be an example, a shining example for those who are seeking to return to the faith or looking for the right answers. Don't pass up an opportunity to share your faith story or evangelize. Don't be afraid to pass up on an opportunity to put your faith in action, whether through service, prayer, or helping others. Do not be afraid to be who you're called to be. Because as St. Catherine of Siena reminds us, if you are what you're meant to be, you can set the world on fire. Today, take that effort to set the world on fire with your gifts and talents that you are perfecting before God. And while you're at it, never cease to give voice to those who are oppressed.
Well said. Especially, I love that last part, those who are oppressed, because in some ways, I think all of us go through some kind of oppression when we live, because when we're living our faith, we can become oppressed. I thought I would end this podcast with something that I just found, because part of that Beatitude says for us to rejoice. And I found an article that I wanted to it's called Rejoice, the Lord is Near, and it's from Today's Catholic. And it says that what does it teach us when we rejoice? And it says, what does this teach us? How can we have that kind of joy, especially when we face difficult situation and suffering in our lives? The kind of joy that St. Paul and the martyrs experienced is a fruit of the Holy Spirit. It comes from the profound realization that the Lord is near, is with us, beside us always. He's with us at every moment of every day, and his love and his gift of peace. The kind of profound joy that fills our souls with peace does not derive from the satisfaction of our physical or material needs. It comes from our friendship with the Lord Jesus. Then when troubles beset us, we are not disturbed within. When we face adversity, we are strong. And so I think that's a good one. And again, that article is from Today's Catholic. The website is todayscatholic.org. Rejoice, the Lord is near. And I think that's a good one for us to think about, is that even though you might feel persecuted, put back, reviled, is that you can still rejoice because you have your faith. And so again, I just want to thank you, Mickey. Thank you so much for joining us for this whole series. And I look forward to what's to come for us on this Family in Crisis series.
I look forward to it as well, Anna. Thank you so much for having me.
God bless you, Mickey. And to all of you, God bless you from Nikki Kelly and myself, and from all of us here at the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. We'll see you next month.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. For more information about the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation, visit nonatus.org or email director.srnf@gmail.com. Did you enjoy this podcast? Listen to other podcasts from Patchwork Heart Ministry by following Patchwork Heart Radio wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Shroud of Turin is one of the most researched and studied relics in church history, and profoundly impacts many who encounter its mystery.
As a person of faith, looking at it through the eyes of faith, I don't think it can help but touch your heart.
Something that we can look on not only to bolster our faith in those moments of weakness, but also to deepen our faith and our appreciation, our intimacy with Christ.
Join Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry as they examine the science of the Shroud through the lens of faith.
Really interesting scientific information that we didn't know about, like the pollen from all the different regions of the world. As the shroud traveled around, it picked that up. Some of the mites, things like that was really interesting to me. I mean, this made you really want to believe it a lot more.
It's impressive. Like humanly, I don't think like that is another level of love. It's not and people like, oh, I love you, I'll give you a chocolate. No. I'm giving you more than my life. I'm giving you my suffering.
Asking both experts and disciples, who do you say I am?
As far as who the man of the shroud is, I, as a person of faith and kind of reviewing the evidence there, it seems that a convincing argument can be made that it's Jesus of Nazareth.
Visit patchworkheart.org/shroud to learn more and get exclusive behind-the-scenes updates for your support.